And even with pricing, we see something at $9.99 or $9.97, we think, what? Yeah, you're not getting me, that's 10 bucks. But they keep doing it. Why? It works. It's a subconscious thing. It works, so they wouldn't be doing it. Now, here's something that's very important for you to know today. I'll give you some secrets. When you look at pricing your product, odd numbers outpull even numbers, meaning 3, 5, 7, 9 sell better than the even numbers. I'm not going to go into psychology, but I'm just going to give you the answer. It's much easier. 7 outpulls all the other numbers. So out of all the numbers, when you're pricing your product, ending it in a 7 will outpull any other number. And there's psychology behind that, but just remember 7 is the magical number. Odd outpulls even, 7 outpulls all of them. But we're thinking, yeah, that's 10 bucks, but again, it's a subconscious trigger. We don't know why we buy. And we get these persuasion shortcuts. We don't have time to process everything. When decisions aren't important, we just rush, we grab things, the knee-jerk reactions like the shampoo. We're just quick, we just purchase it. Or we must act quickly when we're in a hurry to do things. Social pressure. Now, when you have to act quickly and there's an urgency or scarcity, for example, a few Christmases ago, Walmart had these DVD players, dramatically discounted, get people in the store, and this lady was trampled to get to the DV, coma, the whole works. Sometimes we do some strange things when we have that urgency, we have to act quickly. The social pressure, doing different things. We want to be part of the group norm. We're going to talk about social validation today. How does it work? Candid Camera did a study because when you get on an elevator, we have our social norms where you sit, right in the middle and you kind of look up. You're not allowed to talk to anybody. That's what people do. And so they did this experiment where they had people on the elevator and a person would get in and they were all facing the back. So they get in and everyone's facing the back and they press their button and guess what the person does? Face the back with everyone else. When you're not sure how to act, that's what people do. When you go into a foreign country and you're not sure what to do something, or even here, what do? You look around to see what other people are doing. I was in Taiwan, just finished up a seminar, and they took us out to eat, and they brought a big plate of boiled snails with the shell and everything. I'm thinking, wow, what do I do? How do you eat it? Do you suck it out, or do you put the whole thing and you just chew the shell? How do you do it? And so I just kind of sat back, and this is what most people do in any type of social situation, and I found out you just get the toothpick, you pop it out, and you eat it. I wasn't say it was the best thing I've ever eaten, but that's what you do. You look around what other people are doing. That's a persuasion shortcut. When you're unsure how to act, and then there's trust. When there's a high trust level, people don't need to be persuaded. And then, of course, written communication is a big piece. People are more persuaded by written communication than they are by verbal communication. Candid Camera did another thing in Delaware. They had the police officers come, it was all set up, and then it says, "Welcome to Delaware." They put a sign on it that said, "Delaware closed." Can you close a state? The people are stopping and turning around. Officer, how long is it going to be closed? And it's just something about that knee-jerk reaction, written communication. Oh, Delaware's closed. They do that too. They even did that in New York City. They put a stop sign in the middle of a sidewalk in New York City. Written communication, knee-jerk reaction. People were stopping and they were going. And the people who were late were actually running across the sidewalk between the two stop signs. It's a powerful thing. It's a shortcut. And so the message is this, is that we're bombarded with so many persuasive messages. We develop these shortcuts because we don't have time to process everything. And so we develop these shortcuts. So the reality is there's two paths to persuasion. There's the logical side and the emotional side. Two paths. Now we've heard that people buy an emotion. Have you heard that before? And that's true, but you have to have enough logic to follow up, because when that emotion leaves and they don't have enough logic why they buy, that's when buyer remorse kicks in. And you need to have a combination between the two. Now the ironic thing is this. Most people don't know the difference between logic and emotion. Now you're thinking, well, I do. Do you? I mean, do you really? They've done the studies, and this is what it comes down to. They would have logical appeals and emotional appeals. They'd give it to audiences, and they'd say, was this emotional or was it logical? And this is what it came down to. Most people couldn't tell. It was always mixed, but this is what it came down to. This is important. When you agreed it was logical. And when you disagreed, it was emotional. That's what it came down to. But you do need to have both. So it's kind of fuzzy on how they all come together. We have the logical person where they do the evaluation. They follow their head. They want the numbers. And, of course, there's the emotional side where with the instinct. You need to have both. You need to have balance. So I want to talk about the balance of your presentations. The balance between the logic, and they're both important. And there's both steps to have in the different areas, logic and emotion. Now, some presentations require more logic, depending on the personality, depending on the product, and some require more emotion, but you need to have both. So that's what we call balance, the logical and the emotional. Now, logic is more long-term and the emotional is more short-term. And this is where we see a lot of persuaders really just not getting it as far as the balance is concerned. You need to have both. Now, Dale Carnegie says, when dealing with creatures, remember you're not dealing with creatures of logic, but with creatures of emotion. Creatures bristling with prejudice and motivated by pride and vanity. Now, we wouldn't admit that. That's somebody else. But those are the people that you're dealing with. They're going to make up things. There's knee-jerk reactions. How are you going to work with them? Creatures of logic, the emotion, prejudice, pride, and vanity. Because people will make up things. They'll do strange things sometimes. I always wonder, when things are perfect, what happened? Was it a gesture? Where'd the resistance come from? That's what you're looking at between the two. This is what Dale Carnegie said. So, emotion will always win over logic. Is that true? Have you ever tried to convince someone that flying is safe? Or that snakes are safe? Does logic ever work? Doesn't, does it? Does anybody have young children with monsters under the bed? You can be logical all you want, can't you? Well, let's look. There's not there. They don't exist. Does that work? It doesn't. So, emotions will always win over logic. I have my young daughter. She had monsters. She was really scared. I tried to do the logic thing, and so I just developed what we call monster spray. We just spray every night. The monsters go away, and we're good to go. It was much easier because the logic didn't work. And you've probably heard the example, too. You can take a 10-foot plank that's about a foot wide, put it 6 inches off the ground, and say, look, I'll give you $10,000 if you walk across it. And people will. You put the same thing on a 30-story building, same thing, you can do it. What happens? The emotion, the fear, things happen, and we do different things. So one of the things I want to go a little bit in the logical side and the emotional side, evidence. You should use evidence, but use it very sparingly. For example, statistics. Do you believe statistics more or less than you used to? Less. I learned that in school. We take all these statistic classes. Man, you can cook the books. You can find whatever you want with the right question, developing the right statistics. They're still important to use, but you have to be very careful. They need to be specific to what you're talking about. They need to be unbiased. If you come out and say, well, Kentucky Fried Chicken did a study and found out people no longer like hamburgers, okay? Biased, it's not going to work. You need to tell them where it's coming from, and it needs to be verifiable. You didn't say, well, I heard one time that 20% of people needs to be verifiable. Now, evidence, you use it sparingly, but it's important to use with your thing. Now, here's one word I'm going to give you that's important that we found just recently dramatically increases your ability to persuade. Anybody want it? One word? Nobody wants it? Anybody want it? Yeah? Fact. Simple thing. The fact is, just by saying that word, dramatically increases your ability to persuade. Fact. So specific, unbiased, and verifiable.